Okay, welcome. We are live. Hello, everyone. I'm going to wait for Instagram to kind of do its thing here, but we are live again another day. And as I press to go live on Instagram, here we are. Okay, well, welcome to What the Frack Live. Every week we break down marketing tips, topics, trends, all of the things in 20 to 30, maybe sometimes more like 50 minutes or less. We are your fractional team, and every week on Thursday is one of my favorite episode topics because we bring on a new fractional to help you learn a little bit more about some different topics, some new techniques. And today we are here with Drew Smith. Every time I listen to Drew or I talk to Drew, I learn something amazing. Ever since we worked together a few years back, I just remember everyone in the office always waiting to hear what Drew was going to say on the phone because we would all learn something. So I'm really excited about our conversation today about marketing attribution and data. So Drew, do you want to give a little bit of an intro as to who you are and how you got here?
Yeah, absolutely. I think most people wanted to listen in on my phone calls because I always had like weird analogies that people are like, "What the hell is he talking about?" So like equating data quality to the speed of light. That's one that I remember, and everybody's like, "What the hell?" Okay. Anyways, so
you're gonna have to dive into that at some point. But go ahead. Sorry.
Okay. All right. So I'm the founder and CEO of this little consulting firm called Attributa. We're unique in that our primary specialization is in marketing attribution, with other services around marketing operations, revenue operations, and things of that nature. But truly speaking, we live and breathe marketing attribution on a daily basis. So that's me. My background is a little all over the place. I've done B2B sales. I was an event manager for 7 years, and I sold race car school classes. And then I got into marketing operations in 2015 when I joined LeadMD, which is now Shift Paradigm, and then started getting into marketing attribution in early 2017. And that was just like, it just made my brain happy, and it just fit. And so almost 2 years ago, I started Attributa to try to, do this on my own and build this company with this specialization.
I'm sure any marketer listening right now, especially ones who've had to deal with executive teams or board members or founders who don't really understand how marketing plays into the bigger picture, just feels like you're doing God's work right now, because this conversation, I feel like I hear this all the time. I have friends who are in corporate America who are in maybe more of the sales team, and they literally say things like, I don't understand why we have a marketing team. Like, they don't really contribute. And I'll literally sit down with them and be like, okay, see this thing you did? That's marketing. See this thing you use? That's marketing. Like, there's so many pieces. And so everyone who watches this knows I like to start with an unpopular opinion. And my unpopular opinion, which may be popular amongst marketers, but not amongst maybe business owners, is that every campaign is trackable if you have the right data points and the right success metrics. And I like to go back to, like, everyone always asks me, like, Nicole, what about a billboard? You can't track a billboard. And I was like, well, you can. If you're collecting zip code, you can attribute a certain percentage of people coming in from certain zip codes around that billboard as saying, okay, they probably saw it. But I want to hear your opinion on marketing attribution and like that kind of, how do we as marketers attribute sales and different pieces of the company growth to what we're doing?
Yeah, so first off, I would say that if you give me a week to come up with a strategy for how to track a billboard using marketing attribution, I'll figure some things out. So yes, most things can be tracked, even using tools like marketing attribution. There's a pretty commonly held kind of belief that podcasts are not trackable by marketing attribution. Well, they are. I wrote a whole article that solves it. Now, there's still going to be some gaps in there. This isn't like 100% data quality, but you will never achieve it, much like the speed of light. So there's a there are solutions to a lot of these problems. Now, I would say my unpopular opinion about marketing attribution, I've actually got, it's kind of two opinions rolled into one. Most organizations are far more ready than they believe they are for marketing attribution. And number two, part of that is that far more organizations don't need marketing attribution that think they do. So, which is also a very unpopular opinion considering I sell marketing attribution services, right? So those two things I think go hand in hand. More are ready than they think and fewer need it than realize.
Yeah. Can you, well, before we get into that, because Tamara, I think that that's important, but can you just take a step back for anyone who doesn't understand what is marketing attribution?
Yeah, so marketing attribution, the way I define marketing attribution is marketing attribution. Well, it takes on multiple flavors. Marketing attribution can be things like first touch and last touch. But usually when people talk about marketing attribution, they're talking about multi-touch attribution. And so to me, multi-touch attribution is essentially creating a story about how an opportunity or a deal came to be. The different ways that people have engaged with you throughout that journey are the different chapters in the story, and the different people that you engaged with are the different characters in the chapters. Some mean more than others, but they're still a part of that journey, right? So that to me is what marketing attribution is, particularly multi-touch attribution.
Got it.
It's beautiful. It's very poetic. I love when you can add poetry to data.
Well, as somebody who's a data nerd, it is incredibly rare that I am poetic, so I'll take it.
But I'm really curious because I'd like to know, who do you think doesn't need marketing attribution? Like that, when you talked about your unpopular opinion, that I think I got stuck on, like my head could not wrap around it. Why would someone not need it? In what scenarios?
Yeah, great question. So I think that there's this desire for organizations to want to do too much too soon. And so if you are a startup in the B2B world, one, you don't have a complex marketing mix. Your marketing mix is pretty simple. You're a startup. Number two, you don't have a complex sales motion. A lot of startups, the founder is doing a lot of the selling, or they might have a VP of sales that's doing a lot of selling. And when you don't have a complex sales motion, you don't have a complex buyer journey. And so what happens is the simpler those things are, the less need for complex data you have. The sign behind me says simplicity scales, complexity fails. We want simple as much as possible. So we don't want to overcomplicate things. If you have a very simple marketing mix and a very simple sales process and buying process, you do not need complex marketing attribution. So like, I am a consulting company that specializes in marketing attribution. I don't do it. I don't. Simple reason, I do all of our marketing and I do all of our selling. So I know where every deal comes from. Why do I need complex data to know where every deal comes from? I don't. But when you are a large organization with a complex marketing mix and 100 or more sales reps, there's no way for any person to know where every single deal came from without complex data, right? So startup world, you don't need attribution, but when you scale up, you absolutely do.
What's in startup world, if let's say I know that eventually I'm gonna need it, but maybe I don't need it now, is there some steps that I could take right now to set myself up for that? But just, you know.
Yeah. So what I would say is if you pretend like you need it, operate in that manner, and then when you do need it, you'll be ready. So what do I mean by that? What I mean by that mostly is create operational rigor in the way that you execute your processes. So to be a little bit more specific, UTM strategy. Use the same UTMs every damn time. And when I say every damn time, I mean no excuses. Don't do weird things. Just use the same things over and over again. When you're executing a marketing campaign in your marketing automation system, Make sure that you're passing that campaign data over into Salesforce campaigns. Make sure you're using the same Salesforce campaign types and the same Salesforce campaign member statuses every single time. You don't need to use attended one time and then attended in person the next time, and then the word attend, and then the word attend with a spelling typo. Like, be consistent. The more that you can be consistent and develop that operational rigor while you're small, it's easier to maintain it when you're big versus having to go back and say, well, we've got 14 different UTM combinations that all mean organic Facebook. That's going to cause you problems when it's time. But if you develop that operational rigor now, when it's time, you're ready to rock and roll. You're going to have a really easy go.
Yeah. I mean, I don't care if you're small or big, like dirty data is something that we see on a daily basis. I can even tell you, you have to have some funny stories about dirty data.
The ones that so here's the fun ones are the ones where we're doing an implementation of like a multi-touch attribution software, and we're going in to look at their campaign member statuses. This is where we always see it is, and when I was talking about having typos in your campaign member statuses, that was not hyperbole. We encounter that all the time, where there's typos in campaign member statuses. Or I worked with a client who had, for their trade show campaign type, had 123 different member statuses. And over 20 of those all just indicated that they attended the trade show. So those are scenarios where you've got to do a lot of data cleanup to get to that point. Now, the fun part of this is this. This is where the analogy of the speed of light comes into play. You do not need to have perfect data because you will never, ever achieve perfect data. And it's the same reason why we will never achieve the speed of light. So there's some weird physics stuff that happens where the closer you get to traveling the speed of light, it makes it harder and harder and harder to advance 1 more percent towards the speed of light, which is the exact same principle of perfect data. Once you get closer and closer to 100% data fidelity, the amount of effort that it takes to advance to that next percent, you eventually hit a tipping point where the effort and energy to advance that next percent does not result in the return that justifies the effort, right? So the law of diminishing returns, the closer we get to perfection, the harder it is to advance. And so it just makes it not worthwhile at all.
Yeah.
Maybe my favorite analogy of the week.
Of the week. Sid, you only gets the week, Tamara?
Okay, maybe all right. I could go further. Maybe the quarter. Like, that's fantastic. I love it. Also feels like sometimes that might be hard to explain to a client who's like, no, it needs to be perfect, right? Like, how do you square that? But that's not necessarily my question right now. That's just more of adding to your poetic thought.
Yeah,
so,
we can answer that though, because like the way that I address that is pretty simply is you don't need perfect data for the data to still tell me the story and tell me what I need to know, right? If I know that we went to a trade show and 150 people that went to the trade show, sales rejected 147 of them, but the other 3, we actually don't know what happened. Does that matter? What happened to the other 3? No, 147 of them were rejected. It's the wrong trade show. No matter what happens with those 3, it's still the wrong trade show. I don't need to get the data perfect for those 3 to know that that trade show was a waste of time.
Yeah. I feel like I see this a lot, the same like situation with when we set up project management or CRM softwares for companies, like very similar, where we go in and they want, oh, it needs to be automated and we need to have a custom field for this and we need to know about this. And it's like, when was the last time you reported on that? And also, what success metric does that actually like contribute to that we need to add all those extra steps? So it's kind of that a really fancy way of saying the 80-20 rule, right? Like, can you get 80% of what you want or for 20% of the effort, right? Like, how can we get the most out of what we're doing without driving your employees so crazy that they are not going to ever like hit perfection. I love it. I think that's a great way of putting it.
So how do you, when you go into a company, how do you assess what sort of attribution system is best for them? Like what is kind of your standard for going in and being like, okay, this company should do something like this. That way, like people who are watching can either gain from that if they're a fractional or if they're a company or a startup looking at what they should do, they understand what these steps should be.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we start out by understanding what they're capable of currently, and from a people, process, and technology standpoint. And then we also assess what they are capable of currently from a data standpoint. So there's a wide gap between what you're capable of right now and what you want to be able to do. We also will assess their needs, really. Like what are your data needs? Do you need to be able to track that somebody MQL'd 4 times? But if the average person MQLs 1 time, you don't need the ability to track that they MQL'd 4 times. Like you just don't. So we assess their data needs both through a data assessment, data audit, but then also just like talking to whomever the key stakeholders are that need data to make decisions. So from a CMO standpoint, what type of data do you need to be able to make your decisions? So we do interviews with key stakeholders. We do deep dives into and audits of data and systems and people and processes. There's organizations that just don't have the operational process to facilitate multi-touch attribution, and that's fine. You can't do it now. So what we're going to do is we're going to get you to the point where you can do some things, right? Mm-hmm. We're going to start with some building blocks. And then as we get to the point where we've maximized single touch attribution, whether it's first touch or last touch or whatever, then we'll start assessing, do you even need multi-touch? Like, is your sales process complex enough? Is your marketing mix complex enough? Are you even doing things that would engage somebody that is already in your database? Or is all of your marketing designed to generate new leads, right? So if your marketing mix is not intentionally engaging with people at varying stages of the buying journey, you don't need multi-touch. You really don't.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that this is really important when we talk about if we're talking to the marketers on here or the fractionals who are listening, like one of the things that we always talk about is like we have a whole episode on discovery, right? Discovering what you need in your marketing plan, what you need to actually hit your goals. Marketing is such a big topic and there's so many different specialties and not everyone needs everything, or maybe you just don't need it at this moment. So going back to, do you have the right data to either validate or discredit your success in a campaign, right? Do you have the right data to make the decisions to move to the next level? And then also, what is that success? Are you capturing the data to actually see success in whatever numbers those are? And then, hey, maybe marketing attribution is ready for you in 3 years or 5 years, but maybe it's not right now, right? Keeping it simple, stupid, right? A lot of times is just the best rule of thumb. I think my next question for you is like, what's one surprising KPI or data set that like you're seeing that everyone should be like, oh, maybe I should think about that?
I got two.
Okay.
One of them is going to not be surprising at all, but it's going to be validating. And the other one's going to be surprising. So number one, content syndication, stop. It's a waste of money. For 99% of the clients that I work with, content syndication is the largest just waste of money. Huge waste of money. I've only seen like 2 or 3 clients in well over 100 clients that I've worked with doing it specifically on attribution, where content syndication wasn't just an abject money pit. So content syndication, just stop. It's a waste. Now, the one that's a surprise, I think the one that's a surprise is we've been seeing, this is a trend that I've been seeing over probably the last 2, 3, maybe 4 quarters, but definitely 2, 3 quarters. Bing as a search engine is becoming more and more impactful in our marketing attribution data.
Seriously?
I've heard
Yes. I'm seeing Bing. We're seeing larger increases in just the number of touch points coming through Bing. We're also seeing that the touch points that do come through Bing tend to have higher win rates and higher average deal sizes. So Bing is becoming a more and more important search engine, that, strictly pulling from customer data that we get to look at on a regular basis. Bing is becoming more and more important. Now, the volume, there's still a large volume discrepancy between Bing and Google. But what we're seeing is that volume discrepancy is slowly closing. It's still pretty big, but it's slowly closing. But the biggest thing is the quality of the people coming through Bing is higher.
I wonder why that is.
I have some theories, but I'm not going to go into it now because there's some other there's other people are moving away from some of, the conglomerate, these huge major players, right? They're trying to find places where their data is not being tracked. They're finding alternative sources. And that's why these other servers are actually growing in popularity, and the massive ones are going down because the quality is lower, right? So if you're not going to get the good leads there, people are turning their attention to these other ones. So I've heard this, and I actually experienced it a little bit with my last company, which I found surprising because I kept going like, where are these other sources? And then I saw Bing on there, and I was like, that's still a thing? I didn't even know it still existed.
Seriously.
Yeah, my pet hypothesis is that I think that the reason Bing is increasing and is driving higher quality folks is because Microsoft bundles it in all of their packaging. Like when you buy a Dell machine or an HP machine for your workforce, Office is already pre-installed and Microsoft Edge is pre-installed as your browser. It comes out of the box as your default browser. And when you open up that browser, it defaults to the Bing search engine. And you have people that are in executive roles that have made these buying decisions or have been part of these buying decisions that bought Microsoft Office, that opted into these things being the defaults, and they don't care enough about switching to Firefox or switching to Chrome or switching to Google. They just want to get their search result and they want to they want to move on. So I think that's my hypothesis is Microsoft's bundling, and that, your decision makers are the people that are the least likely to go spend 15 minutes reconfiguring the default search engine on their browser to Google when it defaults to Bing.
Yeah. Chelsea on LinkedIn agrees with you, Drew, just saying. There you go.
I was going to say, and this couldn't be the reason, but it could be a reason going forward. A lot of the stuff that Microsoft is doing, so if you want to use Outlook with Copilot and Microsoft 360, right? If you want to use those bundles effectively, even on a Mac or on a different product, you have to do it on Bing. So there are some things that probably will even affect that going forward.
Yeah. And here, this is a perfect example of buyer personas in action right here, right? Because once again, we talk all the time. You can look on any marketing blog and see you need buyer personas. But a lot of times what I see, especially marketers who are working executionally within corporations, they know they're there, maybe use them, they think they know them, but really diving deep into your buyer persona, knowing, okay, an executive or someone part of the executive team, maybe they're not using Apple, maybe they're using Microsoft, which means that they're going to use Bing, which means they don't have time to change their search engine, and that's going to be a better, more qualified lead, because what the average Joe who's just typing in some forms is probably not going to be on Bing for whatever reason, right? So it's just just another example of how important really digging into your buyer personas, validating those buyer personas is in your marketing plan.
Well, and also just paying attention to the attribution, right? if you aren't actually looking at the numbers, you would never assume that is a place that's bringing higher quality leads. So if you're actually digging in and you're actually doing that work, you may find, some really good nuggets that are better for you to put money into if you have less money to spend on your marketing to get higher quality leads.
Yeah. And also looking at the data, this is where data, I think my other unpopular opinion, and I talk about this all the time, is how many marketers I run across who are almost like afraid of data. And I truly think my hypothesis on this is that, like, when you're working, especially an agency model, and you have to try to prove to a client why what you're doing is working, and maybe like there's different pieces of the puzzle that are not under your control that are causing your campaigns maybe not to work or whatnot, data can be against you. But I just think that it's so important because, look, I have clients all the time that look at just the top number. Oh, we're bringing in, forms are being filled out. Yay. Forms are being filled out. We have tons of leads. But then when we start digging to see what leads are qualified, what leads are actually, being signed, how long they're taking, things like that, we start seeing that, that form might be getting filled out a lot more, but that form is actually bringing in qualified leads, right? And that's just a different animal altogether. So this is data is really important, I think.
I've got a little bit of a different opinion because you think, some marketers are afraid of the data, but I think maybe it's just that some people don't know how to collect the right data in a succinct way that is easy to use and read. And so, like, this is my question to you, Drew. What is there a platform? Is there a system that you recommend that you like? Like, what and how do you go about this without giving away, I guess, your secret sauce, or give it away?
Yeah, I mean, the secret sauce is really more the methodology that we use than platforms. So, but from a platform standpoint, I mean, you have your basics. You have to have your marketing automation system, your Marketo, HubSpot, whatever. Those are the two most common. Those are the two that are going to be the best. You have your CRM. Your CRM typically is going to be Salesforce. You might have Microsoft Dynamics. Or you might have something else like HubSpot CRM or whatever, but you've got to have your CRM is a part of that. You can do really, really, really good stuff with just that in place if you are doing things correctly. You do not need to go buy advanced multi-touch attribution software to start doing multi-touch. You don't. Both of those systems put together work really well to do multi-touch. I mean, they work well enough to do multi-touch for most organizations. Now, once you start down the path of doing multi-touch in like Marketo or Salesforce or HubSpot, you will start identifying all of the different gaps that they have and all of the different things that they don't do. And that's when you start looking at, okay, now I need to go buy additional software. Like, for example, we partner with our number one partner for marketing attribution or multi-touch is Marketo Measure, used to be called Visible. We do a lot of work in that platform. The category is growing. There's other competitors to Marketo Measure out there. They're doing great work. Caliber Mind, we partner with them. They do great work. Dream Data, we partner with them. They do great work. Hockey Stack, they do great work. There's a whole bunch of them out there that are doing really, really good advanced stuff that Marketo, HubSpot, Salesforce can't do. But I always recommend to organizations, like, do what you can in those tools. And then once you kind of exhaust those reporting capabilities or you realize how those fall short, then go ahead and invest in the additional platform.
Yeah, because those are kind of expensive too. So for smaller companies, that's not necessarily in reach.
Yeah. I mean, they can be expensive. I think most of the platforms that we talked about have price points that for smaller organizations aren't going to break the bank. So, for example, like Dream Data has a free trial. So like you can try Dream Data for free, right? Now, to get certain features, and once you get past a certain volume of data or time spent on the platform, you do have to buy the platform. But like they all have pricing tiers. And so depending on the size of the organization, you may not be able to afford the platform. That being said, I can guarantee you, if you can't afford the platform, you probably don't need it. I mean, you're probably in a spot where like you're still too early in your maturity curve as an organization that you don't need it yet.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think if you had to say anything to, a lot of times I run into marketers wanting the data, but maybe the software can't deliver some of these touch points, or the founder of the company doesn't really understand why the data is so important to the marketing team. What would you say to a founder who's like pushing back on gathering more data?
It's a tough one because as a founder, I love data. I would hate to make decisions that have zero data behind them. Now, as founders, sometimes we have to do that, but I would always want more data than less data as a founder. So for me, like that's part of the conversation that I would have is like, don't you want more data though to help you make these decisions? But I also think that a lot of organizations overcomplicate things. There's tons that you can do with just the basics. So most organizations, the approach that they take to data is one, very unstructured, and two, it's also it's accidental. So here's another analogy. You ready for this one? This is another crazy analogy. Back in the day when we all had, wired headphones, right? You put your headphones in your backpack, in your work bag, and by the time you get to work, the wires are always what? Tangled, right?
So yes, that's just taking some.
Yeah, I mean, they're always tangled up though. You always end up with this big knot, right? So there's actually scientific research that's been done as to why wired things knot. It's called knot theory. And basically what it is that there's only a handful of ways for those cords to stay untangled. They either have to be stretched all the way out, they have to be like wrapped up. There's only like a handful of ways that they don't get tangled. There's an infinite number of ways for them to get tangled, which means that they're gonna get tangled. That is the same thing with data. There's only a handful of ways to organize and structure data in a way that data doesn't become tangled and messy and knotted and need to be cleaned up. There is an infinite number of ways that data can get messy and screwed up. So you have to operate off of the assumption that if you do not have an intentional strategy to keep your data untangled, you have to assume that it will get tangled. Most organizations take the opposite approach, that they assume that I can do absolutely nothing at all with my data, but then when I need it, it's going to be pristine. And that is the wrong approach. It's an incidental approach to data instead of an intentional approach to data. So data becomes scary because every time you need it, it's bad, but it's because you also haven't cared for it until you needed it.
Yeah.
Oof. Again, poetry.
I know. I feel like when I go into a marketing strategy meeting, I'm just going to have them watch this first and let them know, like, listen, and then it'll make sense what we're saying. Yeah, exactly.
Let me give you a great example of this. So like organizations to this day still struggle like hell with first touch attribution. And first touch attribution is the easiest thing to do. The reason they struggle with it is because they haven't intentionally designed their first touch strategy. If you go into an organization's CRM and you run a report, and all you do is you look at the lead source field and you look at the number of different values in that field, I can already tell you just by that if they can do first touch attribution and how well they can do it. If they have more than about 30 values in their lead source field, your first touch, you can't do first touch. I guarantee you can't, because your data is so unstructured and so inconsistent, and you haven't intentionally designed it, that first touch is going to be nearly impossible for you. A lot of times we'll see organizations that have 100, 150, 200 different lead sources. And that's just for leads created this year. Let's not even talk about leads created last year or over the last 5 years. You can't do anything with that. It's a mess. It's an absolute mess. You can't do anything with it. So those are the basics that make data really, really easy. Just identify what the 20 lead sources you actually have are and stick to those.
Yeah. Yeah. It's almost like what I'm hearing is that I feel like a lot of times with data and these lead sources and these product fields and all these custom fields, people want to break it down as small as possible to get all these answers, but it actually makes it harder to see the big picture when you break it down that far. And, you know, for me, a lot of it is figuring out, okay, what's success look like and what's that KPI that you're going to get to success? And then how are we like measuring, right? I think a lot of times with marketing strategy, data, life in general, right? We think data is going to happen to us, right? If we collect it all, we're going to see these trends that, you know, blow our mind, right? And yes, there are some magical things that happen that we didn't expect, but a lot of times you need to like have a plan around where is that, what's coming in, what is that, like you said, have you identified a strategic lead source? And I think that that's really important to remember. So a great way to put it there.
Thank you.
So, so I'm like digesting all of this, Tamra. How are you feeling about all this?
Well, I love attribution, and I think I'm on the side of, I've worked with probably a lot of companies that are on the smaller side, you know, like the newer side, right? A lot of startups where you're right, it is just setting up simple strategies for them and collecting the right data. And so I think one of my main questions is, because I love the questions people ask in order to get to solutions, right? So what are maybe the 3 questions that you ask to understand what the right data is that you need to be looking at in order to gauge, you know, kind of your attribution strategy, right? Or how to point them in the right direction to create it so that you can then collect your stories.
Yeah, so I think a lot of times when we talk to clients, we tell clients that good attribution starts at campaign planning. So when you are planning your campaigns, what are your goals? So what are the goals of the campaigns that you run? Are they clearly articulated? So, you know, when I say clearly articulated, I don't mean get leads. That's not clearly articulated.
Make a sale.
Make a sale. That's not clearly articulated. So, for example, when we look at what does good look like in terms of good campaign planning for good attribution, if we're running a program like we're running a webinar, so we could say, look, we want good goal setting for campaign planning for attribution is we want 30% of our webinar registrations to be net new email addresses in our database. The other 70% should come from people that are already in our database. From there, we want the 70% that are already in our database. I want to get 20% of those to an MQL within 30 days. And I want another 20% to become MQL within 90 days. And I want, of the MQLs, I want a conversion rate of 20% of those into opportunities within 180 days. That is good goal setting, because what that does is that helps me understand what we're trying to achieve. Then, as somebody that would be designing the tracking strategy for this webinar campaign that we're running, I know, well, I need to make sure that we're capturing lead source, because we have 30% of the leads, the registrations need to come from net new records. So I need to be able to capture an appropriate lead source for that, right? I need to capture a lead source that tells me that they came from a webinar, but I also need to have a lead source that tells me that which webinar it was, so we can specifically identify this particular webinar. I need to be able to track how many of these folks that registered or attended that turned into MQLs. I know that I have to have a reporting milestone at the 30-day mark and a reporting milestone at the 90-day mark. I also need to be able to have a data point that tells me that 20% of these MQLs also turned into opportunities, and that we're going to measure that at the 180-day mark. So that tells me the data points right there, just because I created really, really well-articulated goals for a webinar, that tells me the data points that I need to have to measure the performance of that webinar. And none of those data points that I just mentioned there is difficult. Those are all actually really easy foundational data points to create. But the fact that I know that I need them means that I can go engineer them. So if you ask those questions up front about what are the goals of our campaigns, are we talking leads? Are we talking MQLs? Are we talking opportunities? What are our mileposts? Because I got to be able to create cohorts and date ranges. If you ask those types of questions during the campaign planning strategy process, it helps you build the measurement strategy and build the data that fulfills those needs. It also helps you understand, like, well, we actually don't have the ability to tell that 20% of the people turned into opportunities. We need to go in and engineer that. We need to go create the ability to do that. So it helps you identify the gaps of what's possible and what's not possible.
Yeah. I think we need to update the original statement at the beginning, is that all campaigns are trackable, all points are trackable, but not all are needed. There you go. We just re-updated that. I agree. I think that, like you said, you have to figure out what success is. It's not just the revenue, right? Like I hear so many times, like, we just want sales. Okay, but if you knew that a certain amount of opportunities turn into sales every time, then you can say, okay, we want to make sure they turn into opportunities, and you kind of work your way backwards. And that is really good, goal setting, KPI planning. And then what I'm hearing is that really good KPI and goal setting and planning actually can turn into really good attribution and data, is what I'm hearing.
You ask for benchmarks though?
No, I don't care about benchmarks. I really don't.
In the company, like the company's past benchmarks or company's past data?
It depends. Sometimes yes, sometimes no, because if a company's benchmarks are with bad data, they're meaningless. If their benchmarks are with good data, based on good data, then they actually have meaning and have value. But it also is going to be heavily dependent upon, when the benchmark was taken, has there been any changes to your operational processes? So, we work with organizations all the time that sales changes when in the sales process they create the opportunity, and that's going to change your benchmarks around win rates. It's going to change your benchmarks around conversion rates, because sales shifted when they create the opportunity from being when the meeting was qualified, after the first meeting took place and we qualified that person, they moved it up to when the meeting was scheduled. Well, all my benchmarks from before that change are meaningless. So there's so many dependencies in there that benchmarks, most of the time, benchmarks are meaningless. Doesn't mean that they can't be valuable. It's that most of the time they're meaningless because of bad data, because of changes to processes, things like that. So we typically don't look at a lot of benchmark data.
Yeah. Okay. So we could talk about this all day because this is super important and we have so many questions. But as we hit 45 minutes or so here, I'm going to kind of wrap it up with a question I keep asking every expert we bring on here. Let's say I'm a business owner. I am a director of marketing. I'm looking to work with someone in your field, whether it's consultant, or a fractional or whatever. What's a red flag I should be looking for?
Ooh, that's a good one. I would say in the attribution space, a red flag would be I would have to say if they can't share any kind of like interesting anecdotes that they've learned, like we talk about how the Bing thing, that we're seeing a lot of growth in Bing. If they don't have anything like that, that they can share, even anonymized. Like I'm not sharing any client's data. That's anonymized. That's a red flag. Like we've got this great success story that we tell all the time about how we worked with this client that they just launched this paid search campaign. It was a direct response campaign, led directly to a demo request form. And we were doing a 30-day measurement check-in. And we did measurement check-in, and all the metrics on the AdWords side looked great. Cost per lead, minuscule. Best cost per lead of every campaign they're running. The highest number of leads generated through this campaign. I mean, it was blowing the doors off of every other campaign. And then we looked into their attribution data, and we saw that every single one of those leads had been rejected by sales because they were all mom and pop shops. And this company didn't have a product for mom and pop shops. They just didn't. So these were just all the wrong leads, the wrong demographic profile. So, and this all took like 15 minutes on a phone call because their data was locked down. Like we were in a really good space. And so we immediately told the ad agency, hit pause on the ad campaign. Don't spend another nickel. Pause it. Let's figure out what's wrong with it. So we looked at the ad. The ad was fine. We looked at the landing page. There it was, staring at us. The image in the landing page was a mom and pop shop. It was meant to look quaint and homey and Main Street, small town America, but that's not who should be responding to this ad. And so all the mom and pop shops that clicked through thought, this is for me. And they filled out the form. And all of the audience that they were trying to get said, this is not for me. This is for mom and pops. So we're not going to fill out the form. So all they had to do was change the image of the ad. We relaunched the ad. Cost per lead went up. Volume of leads went down. But they were actually getting accepted by sales. And some of them were turning into opportunities. So those are success stories that if you are working in marketing attribution, which is my specialty, if you're working in that field, you should have a story like that. You should have things that you've identified. Content syndication sucks. Stop doing it. Stop wasting your money. Bing is getting better. This is how you can actually use attribution to identify wasted ad spend. Like if they don't have a story like that, an anecdote that they can share, it should be in the chamber, ready to go. If they don't have that, then I think that's a red flag.
That's a great one to look out for. I mean, it's so simple, and you're right. Like because we're in this day to day, I know I have stories for my people. You have stories, Tamara, that we could talk about all day long. And I think that that's a really important one that most people, once again, you're interviewing, you're dating, whoever you're bringing in, whether it's a fractional, an agency, a new hire, you're dating them. We're going to get married if this works out. And so you need to be able to feel like that, have the intuition around it, have the emotional response around it. So it's not just data, right? It's about them being able to articulate why that data is so important. What are the trends they're seeing, things, stories, all of that piece. So I absolutely love that. I think
it's also great. Like company case studies, right? Like, and I don't think everybody would think to ask that when seeking people to help with their organization. So I think that's really critical.
Yeah. And I think too, when you said don't reveal your secret sauce, right? Like, I think for a lot of us, the secret sauce is the person and how they interpret things, right? Like, that's why when you're building an agency, it's so hard to hire people who can do the things that you do, because a lot of times in this realm, people want the way you interpret things and the way that you, what you bring to the table. And so, yes, you can collect all the data you want, but this is another reason why working with someone like Drew or Drew's company, actually can help you see things that you would never see, because just because you have the data doesn't mean you're interpreting it the way that it needs to be, looked at. So, Drew, if someone saw this, and I think that a lot of people saw this and want to work with you, how can they find you?
Yeah. So our website, www.attributa.io. I'm on LinkedIn. We've got an Attributa page on LinkedIn. I'm on LinkedIn. You can find me there. I know my last name's Smith, so it can be difficult to find. So it's Andrew, Drew in parentheses, and then Smith. Makes it easier to find a Smith on LinkedIn, because if you just look for Andrew Smith, there's like a million of us. And then, we've got our own podcast that we're doing called Attribution Nation Podcast. So you can search for that as well. Those are the best ways to get in touch.
Well, on that note, everyone, I hope you enjoyed it today. Please join our community, whether that is on LinkedIn. We have a really vibrant community on LinkedIn every week here on our lives. So if you know someone who needs to come on, let us know. Every week we do troubleshooting and case studies. So go check out YouTube, join our newsletter if you want to be the first to know about anything. We're on all the platforms. And Tamara, I think that's it.
That's it. It's What the Frack. Thanks for joining.
Thanks for having me.